Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Time Traveler's Handbook. This is the 6th out of 7 episodes about Palm Springs. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, go ahead and watch them now. I've made a playlist with all of the episodes so that you can watch them chronologically. Spoilers for Palm Springs ahead. An interesting dilemma is the question of affecting others around you while you are stuck in a time loop. The question is this: is it wrong to torment or otherwise ruin the lives of those who are not stuck in the time loop and will have their memory reset at the beginning of the day? There are a lot of angles to take this, so let's talk about it. And a quick disclaimer, this is just my perspective on this, and I don't expect it to be the correct perspective on it. I'm just taking it in the context of the universe that we're talking about. First, we've established in our previous videos that the universes continue on after the loop resets, which means that essentially resetting the loop is creating a parallel timeline and the original universe carries on. So, anything that happens in that universe becomes a universe that exists somewhere in the multiverse, and thus lasting change can happen from the events of the loops. In this situation, for example, there are probably countless of loops where the wedding is a total disaster, or many people died, and so on and so forth. Additionally, since the loopers are just traveling backward in their minds, presumably a version of themselves still exists after the loop has already reset, which means that any amount of physical pain you could put yourself through will reflect on versions of yourself in the future of that alternate universe. Now, those are some reasons to not make others suffer around you. So let's explore some of the reasons why you shouldn't care when you're in a time loop about the suffering of others. Let's start with this. There is nothing that one can do to atone for the suffering of others within the loop. You cannot go back into a parallel timeline once you have left it, meaning that whatever harm you have done there is final and there's no room for penance. Essentially, from your perspective, the events that happen there no longer exist in anything but your past, and everything that did happen is simply reset. The only place this falls short is if there is some sort of an extra dimensional being that would be able to judge you for the suffering you have caused through the multiple parallel timelines. But in this show, there is nothing that leads us to believe that there is such a being in the universe of the show. So ultimately, there isn't a right answer here, and it comes down to what you believe. If you think that nobody being able to hear the tree fall in the woods means that it didn't fall, then you're free to do whatever you want. But if not, then there's some accountability to be had for making others suffer. There are 2 lasting ways to bring about pain to others, including making other looping people suffer. We can see Roy's treatment to Niles as an example, where he comes and tortures him on the regular to try to get his revenge on putting him in this situation. Niles has trauma from these events that would not so easily go away. That suffering is hard to overcome, but Roy does attempt to pay penance to Niles by staying out of his way for the remainder of their time in the loop. The other way is to bring suffering about to others on the final loop. Since escaping the loop puts you into a continuation of the timeline you are currently in, any events that happened on that loop would be the true past of the timeline you are in. So, if someone died, for instance, that person is now permanently dead with no way to bring them back. This is why in time loops, most often the final loop is an attempt to make everything right in the world before leaving the loop forever. Just making that one day perfect means that that day will always be perfect and you can escape without the lasting trauma of whatever would have happened if it weren't the last loop. This concludes our discussion on the suffering of others while you are in the time loop. We have one more episode after this talking about recognizing when other people are looping when you are not. Hope to see you there, and thank you again for listening.